Welcome to the BeYOU podcast. I am here with Steve Mehr. He's a multi-millionaire, a serial entrepreneur. He is actually the founder of an ad agency called WebShark 360. Also has a law degree, consultant for multiple successful businesses, and he is also an author. Steve, how are you doing today, man?
Good. How are you?
I'm great, man. First things first, I think you should get into your story on, how you achieved success and how you became an entrepreneur.
Okay, so for those of you that don't know, I started my first business early on out of high school, and I was selling electronics equipment to the kids in high school. And from there, I opened a small retail store. I decided not to go to college initially, and from the small retail store, put in a lot of hours and a lot of time, and it eventually grew to two stores, and then a wholesale warehouse, and from there, an online business. And it just, it kept growing based on really two factors. The first factor was failure wasn't an option for me. I had moved out of my parents' house at age 18, and beyond that, there was a lot of people that were calling me or were told me initially I would be a failure. I would end up on the streets. What was I thinking? Education is the only way out, and so I really didn't, from a psychological perspective, give myself an out or an option. So this had to work. So I put in ridiculous amount of hours to make up for the knowledge and the connections that I didn't have. And beyond that, pretty much I lived on the bare minimum. Whatever money the business made, which, the first year it was, obviously not very profitable. But as it started to make a little bit of money, I made sure I lived well below my means, and I plowed the rest of the revenue and the cash flow from the business back into the business, growing the business. And I think that's a piece that a lot of people skimp out on, because as soon as it makes money, they take that money out and they spend it, and rather than growing the business or making sure the business is healthy. So I did that for about 7 years. For 7 years, I lived, literally, I was making a smaller salary than a lot of the people that worked for me. And that's the way I lived. But all the extra money got plowed back into inventory. It got plowed back into adding technology to the business, like computers and software systems, building websites, hiring a sales team. So, those are the things that I did in order to scale the business up and take it from doing a few $100 a month to all of a sudden doing, $300,000-$400,000 a month in revenue. And, so that's kind of the story on that. And during that time, I did end up going to school at night based on a promise I made my father, and went to night school. It wasn't easy. It's not easy taking, working from 8 to 5 and then taking a 6 to 9 p.m. class, or a 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. class. Half the time I was asleep in the second half of the class. And then what happened was on Friday and Saturdays, when there was no classes, because I wasn't really paying attention in the class because I was so exhausted, I ended up studying and making up for that fact. So I literally had no life for, I'd say, 7 years. I mean, it was tough. It wasn't easy. But that's the no nonsense, no excuse attitude I think you need to have if you want to make it, especially for somebody like me. When my parents were immigrants, they didn't have a support system. So when I was growing up, there was no uncle or cousin or somebody that went to school or owned a business that was like, oh, hey, Steve, here, let me help you out, or let me introduce you to my network. I didn't go to a good college. I didn't have that network. So literally I had to build everything myself from scratch. And that really comes from, raw hours initially, living a very unbalanced life initially, and a lot of sacrifice and living below your means and plowing it in. And then, what happens eventually is certain amount of people around you see you, like, literally killing yourself to get ahead, and what you're willing to do with the scraps. And then eventually, you build a network that way, because you earn people's respect. Even if they're a few levels above you, they really respect you. And through that mutual respect, what happens is then you might get better opportunities. And that slowly happened for me.
Yeah. So let's taking it back to, I mean, obviously you were building your business, and you even went back to and did your law degree while you were building your business. What do you have to say to those people who are trying to build their business but say they don't have enough time to go to school, or they don't have enough time to build a business on the side?
You bring up a good point, because you never have enough time. You never have enough resources. I mean, even if you look at Elon Musk with Tesla, he didn't have enough money to start that company. He didn't have enough time. He didn't have enough, the right people around him. He didn't have the resources. So regardless of what your dream is, people mistake the fact. They think opening a business means having a lot of money to buy a business or basically kickstart a business, and that's not the case. I've never opened a business that had resources. You never have enough resources. You never have the right team. You never have enough money. You never have enough staff. What you need is to be resourceful. And I think people confuse the two. Resources mean you have all these assets to deploy. Being resourceful means you don't have these assets and you're going to think outside the box. You're going to be creative and problem solve to get to the same point you would have if you would have had the resources. So when I look to invest in a business right now or into an entrepreneur right now, I look for the guys that are resourceful, not the guy that has a lot of money. I don't want to be partners with Donald Trump. I want to be partners with MacGyver. And I say this all the time. I want the guy who, when a problem happens, because running a business is literally being the chief problem solver. It's being, the chief babysitter. So shit's going to hit the fan and problems are going to happen. And sometimes money won't fix it. Sometimes, having the right team around you won't make a difference. So that's where you need to focus on being a problem solver and focus on thinking outside the box and being creative. And how do you do that? That only comes with a lot of trial and error. So people that do a lot of trial and error, that fail at a lot of things, that try everything. I'm one of those people. I try everything. I've bungee jumped all the way down to, I'll do things that are completely uncomfortable for me. I've done a 140-foot scuba dive before. It took us 40 minutes to come back up because of you got to stop and decompress and do all those things. So, what it is, you expose yourself to so much that now this vast amount of knowledge and exposure turns into experience. And when you come up against a problem, you could think outside the box. I was telling some of my followers the other day that, what do I read for fun? I read medical journals and things that have nothing to do with my business. Why? Because you won't believe how many times that will set off or trigger some aha moment. Or when you're dealing with a problem, you have this knowledge base that you can draw upon that most people wouldn't have access to. So I think it's this thirst and hunger to always improve yourself and always keep pushing yourself forward. And I think that's what separates the good entrepreneurs from the average ones.
Right. So during this process, did you have anybody who was, pushing you, like a mentor? And if you did, how did you go out there and find a mentor or meet with them?
Yeah, I mean, my father is probably not only my biggest fan today, but he was also someone that I always looked up to because he gave me kind of that no excuse attitude, not by telling me, but through his actions. Came here, didn't understand the culture, didn't really speak English really well, but he did everything from owning a small video store to selling shampoo to whatever it took. And he always smiled, and he always was positive, and he always was inspirational. And he always tried to tell me, like, look, you could be anything in life. You could do anything in life. You just need to push yourself. And the difference between people that are successful and aren't successful, it's that split second. It's that instant that, it's like when you lay in bed and in the morning you're like, should I go work out today? And you have that small window to jump up and go put your shoes on. But what percentage of people do that? 99%. That moment passes and they don't take the initiative. So what he taught me was you need to take initiative. If you want to do something, you need to take initiative. And he was, and I always had absurd dreams, and he never knocked me down. So, and I think, that made a big impact and a big difference in my life. Maybe he wasn't able to provide the best network or the best education or the best, connections for me. But the fact that I had unwavering support behind me, that's kind of what allowed me to kind of put myself out there and be the type of person that I am. And then from there, once I got into business, you absolutely have a lot of mentors. Mentors are critical and crucial. To this day, I have a lot of mentors, and in literally in every business that I have a different mentor that I look up to. And then I have mentors that I look up to in life. And all a mentor means is somebody that has a few qualities that you aspire to emulate, that you aspire to improve yourself to be. Now that could be financial, it could be health, it could be spiritual, it could be whatever. So, but people like that, opening a dialogue and opening communication with them and feeding off of their energy and learning from them is critical. Mentors aren't always perfect. A lot of my mentors, I wouldn't trade my life for their life. but they have qualities that I want to learn. I want to absorb into my own personality and into the way I conduct myself or I conduct my business. So, so that's something that I think people need to, be aware of, so that they're not always these amazing, perfect people that you want to, be like, but they definitely have some traits that can improve your life if you were able to emulate them.
Yeah, that's obviously that's exactly what a mentor is supposed to be, especially in different parts, especially if they're giving you time and effort and support. And just like your father gave you a lot of support. Now, were there any points in your career where you kind of took a step back and you kind of got knocked in the face a little bit, like a little bit of adversity? And
I got
how did you go out there and overcome it?
I got knocked in the face every day, man. Getting knocked in the face and getting pushed back is normal. So I think how you deal with it is just, I mean, for me, I used to be I'm going to step back from that question for a minute. I used to be a very emotional person, and I used to actually get in a lot of fights growing up, and I got kicked out of high school because of that. And for me, I went through a journey of learning to become unemotional and learning to become logical. And I think when you face adversity, that's when you need to learn not to be emotional. Okay, because shit happens. I mean, this is life. It's what it's about. And the core definition of success means you've overcome an obstacle. So how can you be successful if you've never overcome an obstacle? The guy who inherited $5 million is not successful. He's rich. There's a difference. So so I think that you got to be logical when you hit obstacles, and you just got to take a step back and not look at it in the first person. You got to take a step back, look at it in the third person, and say, this shit happened, and how am I going to overcome it? Early on, I was sued by a bunch of manufacturers because I was selling. I was an unauthorized dealer, even though I did become an authorized dealer for all these electronics. Initially, I wasn't, and they tried to put me out of business. I went through a lot of both personal and professional adversity. I mean, there was times in my life where I remember, I had made it, but around 2000, 2001, when the stock market had crashed and the economy wasn't doing good, our sales plummeted, and I put $190,000 on my credit cards. They were completely maxed out. And 3 days later, I had payroll due, and I didn't have money in the bank account. So, I mean, those are things that you need to be okay dealing with. I mean, that's not, it just comes with the territory. You don't run and hide. You don't say, holy shit, now I'm going to go hide. So I think that, the adversity part, that's what makes you who you are. I mean, that's kind of the whole story is the adversity. It's not the good stuff. The good stuff's whatever. It's a byproduct. But, the whole story is the adversity. And it's not fun when you don't have that adversity. Trust me. Like right now, when you're in a little bit more of a flow and life's good, you're like, it's not as fun. I'm like, I need more of the challenges. So I think I lost you on audio though. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you
Oh,
great.
okay, good. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we could talk for 4 hours about different things that have popped up and how I overcame them. But I think people need to understand that you're going to lose parents, you're going to lose spouses, you're going to lose girlfriends, you're going to lose boyfriends, you're going to, people are going to die, people are going to get sick, people are going to get cancer. Those are the real difficult stuff to deal with. Then beyond that, you might lose all your money, you might go broke. Thank God in this country they don't throw you in jail anymore. It used to be a crime to file for bankruptcy. It's not a crime anymore. So what are people afraid of? Go out there, give it a fucking shot. You're not going to end up in jail. You file bankruptcy, you move on with your life. America has the easiest set of debtor rules than almost any country in the world. You can't pay your debts. You file a piece of paper and you move on with your life, So, but people, the biggest obstacle for people achieving their dreams or their goals, it's two things. One is fear and the other one is patience. If they don't try hard or long enough, or they don't try at all because of fear. So fear is the first obstacle. And then when they get over fear, the second one's patience. They're not patient enough. They want it yesterday. They want it reality TV style. They want it right now, Instagram, give it to me, give it to me. And life doesn't work that way. So I think, in my situation, it took me 8 years to become a millionaire. And I still felt dirt poor because, it's just, you have money tied up in different places and whatever. And even if you're liquid, it's kind of you've leveraged it against, the business you've built. I mean, my business was doing, $6-7 million a year in revenue, but yeah, I mean, I might have been worth like $2 million relative to what my business was doing. My net worth wasn't much. So I had to make sure I had a lot of money in reserves and, whatever the situation was to make sure the ball is rolling. And even then, $1 million isn't what it was yesterday. I mean, it's not that much money. So it took me a very, very long time to get to the point where I felt like I was comfortable.
Right. Now, you've obviously reached a great level of success. And one question I want to ask you, especially a lot of the viewers are pretty much asking ours, is what keeps you going? Why do you keep, working your ass off?
I brainwashed myself into developing the traits that it took to be a successful person. And you're not born with them. I wasn't born with them. Some people might be born with them. I wasn't born with them. I had to work on myself to develop successful traits. I had to work on myself to develop successful habits. And that's not something you switch off. When you've done it for 20 years, like I have, I'm 39 years old. I started when I was 16, my first business. So for 23, 24 years, I've been operating a certain way. Well, really in my early 20s is when I really started developing the success habits. But almost 20 years I've been operating a certain way. And now that I have those habits, I wouldn't want to live any other way. I get off on achievement. I mean, money's kind of a secondary, it's a byproduct. But being able to get up and move the ball forward and achieve something, to me, that's the most fulfilling thing. And one of the things I'm doing now is with both Instagram, my social media, and I'm trying to do YouTube and do different types of mentorship classes online that I'm starting to put together. It's being able to now give some of that back to people, give them some of those tools, because not everybody, I don't think people should have an excuse, because today, I didn't have Google growing up. So today you can almost get an answer for anything. And for me, it wasn't like that, but I feel like there's still a lack of good information for people. So, and I feel like sometimes when you hit an obstacle, sometimes it's just that one thing that someone that has experienced it, that they could tell you to overcome that obstacle and keep going. So, my goal right now is to be able to, share some of that knowledge.
Right. Now, you have a huge reach on social media. You have huge influence on social media. What's your main goal with all your followers, to go out there and inspire others?
Spread good vibes and just, initially it was my social media accounts, specifically my Instagram, was to counteract all the accounts out there that seem like, these guys are really successful and they're giving advice. And then you look them up online and it's some like 18-year-old kid that's never done anything with his life. Or, they're taking pictures next to daddy's car. So initially I was like, this isn't right. We got to add some balance to this. And I didn't take it as serious. But as I saw how people were reacting to it and the amount of emails and direct messages I was getting, people just giving me wonderful feedback. I mean, just amazing feedback. And it kept me engaged enough to continue to develop it. And at this point, I look at it as a platform that, there aren't a lot of people out there really teaching people how to think. Okay, because if you think properly, you can feed yourself. Okay, it's easy to give somebody money and say, go spend it, and it's going to be done by the end of the week. But there aren't too many people out there teaching people how to think successfully and where they can feed themselves for a lifetime. And so my goal over the next 6 months is to develop, informational material to help people how to think. And my Instagram, really a lot of it is about perspective and mindset. Regardless of if you look at all the posts, besides the personal ones, I mean, most of it has some kind of a perspective or a mindset connotation to it. So, and I think that's kind of one of the most important factors to being successful. It's thinking successful. If you can't think successful, you're not going to be successful. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Okay, definitely. No, I think that all of your followers will appreciate that, and they appreciate you delivering a lot of content for everyone. Now, if you could give one piece of advice to where you could reach everyone in the entire world at once, yeah, everyone would listen to you, what would it be?
Well, I think we talked about it earlier. Don't be afraid and be patient. And if you can master those two things, you could pretty much master anything in your life. Um, whether you want to, your goal is a high level of education, or it's a high level of financial success, or it's a high level of physical success like health or whatever it is, you have to have a mastery of those two qualities. Okay, you can't be afraid, and you have to be patient, and then the rest just comes down to action, right? So you got to act. So, but you got to act without the fear, and you got to act knowing that things are going to take a lot longer than you think. Things are going to take, probably 10 times longer than you think it's going to take to get the results. And as long as you put that in perspective and understand that, then achieving success is not that difficult.
Right. Now let's talk about your book a little bit, Dominate Your Goals. Go ahead and explain exactly what your message is with your new book, man. There it is.
It's not, it's more of a guide. It's really short. So it's more of a guide, and it's really short. So really, a lot of people are like, look, you got to write a book. And I'm actually writing a bunch of guides, really. But the first one, I thought, I can give this great information, but if people don't know how to manage their goals, if people don't know how to goal set and manage, how to bring the ball forward, then the rest of the information I give is kind of useless. So for the first one, I thought it was really important to do something on goal setting and goal management. So really, it's a guide on goal setting and goal management. And it's really, it's to the point, because I hate reading stuff, and I'm 300 pages in and I've only taken out 3 or 4 nuggets of information out of it. So I'm not one of those people that, adds a lot of fluff. It was initially it was 50 pages, and I worked really, really hard to knock, 15 pages off of that. So it took me an extra month. It took me a month to put it together, and then it took me a month and a half to actually make it shorter, because I don't want people reading a bunch of fluff. I mean, it should be, you read it, it's to the point, it motivates you, it gives you a worksheet and a little plan of action on what you need to do, and that's it. So in the future books, I mean, obviously going to be probably a little bit more in depth depending on the subject, but I'm going to try to maintain that format, because we've gotten amazing feedback, on the book itself.
Definitely. Now, guys, we're gonna have his link to the book right under this podcast. You guys need to follow him on Instagram. It's Agent Steven. And is that the same thing for your Periscope?
No, it's not. So my Instagram is Agent Steven, and on Periscope and Twitter, it's Ask Steve Mehr, my name. So it's Ask Steve Mehr, Mehr.
Okay, guys, so that's his social media. Definitely stay plugged in with him. Steven, thank you for hopping on the podcast today. We really appreciate it, man.
Thanks, no problem, Chris.